first item, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item is the minutes of this committee's meeting held Monday, July 12th, and the recommendations to approve those minutes.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item.
Next item, item 2. Just give me 1 second. Is the authorization for development permit for a 156-unit 4-story apartment project named Tamarack at 3180 Dayanee Springs Boulevard. It's the final phase of the development. My understanding is that the proponent is here to respond to any questions if need be. The staff recommendations to approve the signing and sealing of the development permit, and that the Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee send this application forward to this evening's council meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay, just for your information, the setback differences are because of the visual perception only of the developments, just to enhance it. So all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Next item, item 3, concerns the authorization for the issuance of a development permit for a street-oriented village home development named Cedar Creek at 1460 Southview Street. The staff recommendations that council approve the signing and sealing of the development permit and that it be executed, and that this item move forward to this evening's council meeting.
So moved. Second, and I have just a question.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a question for staff. So I just need to ask, along Coast Meridian, is the street going to be like what we call walkable, or is it going to look like Mariner? I'm just trying to envision what's it going to be like from a walkable perspective.
Through the chair, the units along Coast Meridian are all going to be fronting Coast Meridian.
Okay. That's what I wanted. I wasn't as clear, but that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Okay, upon discussion with staff on this today, the downside of this whole thing is that we don't have the full information, and this is being pushed forward. So one of the things that we could do, it came before staff 6 months ago, and there's been different architects working on the project. So the downside is not having all the documentation that we would normally have, all the studies and all of that. So I would wonder if you would like to defer this for a full review until all the studies and that are in. So I would question Councillor Rasmussen would like to speak, so I'll go ahead and let him speak first.
Well, thank you, Councillor Reid. And you took the point that I was going to bring up. I feel that this should go back to staff and the proponent to have the full reports before us. This is a development permit. It will not come back to us again. Once we pass this and move this through, this is done. We never see it again. And I don't feel comfortable myself moving this forward with the development servicing isn't finished, transportation service reports isn't been done, and the environmental service report's been done. And that's almost everything you need to do to move forward an application. So my recommendation would that this be deferred back to staff to have all those reports completed and come back to council for the DP when those reports are done. I think it's important that we as council have the proper information to make a proper decision on. And we don't have that at this point with this report the way it is. And I would ask the committee to do that, please. Thank you.
Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. My question is to staff. You've indicated in the report that you will see the conditions satisfied prior to issuance of a building permit. So can you come back then to us prior to that, or is that sort of defeating the whole purpose of bringing it forward today?
Through the chair, I would say the latter.
Okay.
So I'd actually like to move deferral of this item. I actually made some notes here that suggest that I'm prepared to support it, but I have some anxiety around that, and that I would want the proponent to know that really staff then have the final say. And does that mean that we're abdicating our responsibility to staff? So I did have some question about that, and my biggest concern, of course, was about what it looked like on the street frontage. So given the general sense, I don't know that it would actually make it through council tonight. So that would be sort of moot. So I will move deferral until we can get those reports.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, opposed, carried. Next item, please.
Next item concerns the authorization for the issuance of a development permit for street-oriented village home development at 3431 and 3435 Galloway Avenue. Recommendations that council approve the signing and sealing of this development permit and that it be executed and that it move forward to this evening's council meeting.
Do I have a mover?
I'll move.
Second? Okay, I have a comment on this one. One of the things that has been brought up in here is that there was a semi-public outdoor amenity area which we are removing from the staff review because this isn't semi-public. The actual amenities belong to the Strata Corporation, so the right-of-ways will be the actual right-of-way areas only. That will not incorporate the playground. Whatever arrangement the Strata Corporation, who owns the playground, makes with the neighborhood is up to the Strata Corporation. But just so that is, everyone's very aware of that. Councillor Rasmussen, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you very much. I don't have a problem with this application. What I will note that these next three applications total 101 townhousing units.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moved, recommendation seconded. All in favor? Opposed, carried. Next item, please.
Next item, item 5, is also the authorization for the issuance of a development permit. This is for a 16-unit village home development at 3407 Galloway Avenue. Recommendation is to approve the signing and sealing of the permit and that it be executed and that the application move forward to this evening's council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed, carried. Next item.
Item 6 is a conservation permit. It's for the Tyne Ridge development at 1295 Soball Street. The staff recommendation is that council approve the issuance of the conservation permit for this development and that it move forward to this evening's council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Before we go any further, I would like to ask Mr. McIntyre if he would like to just speak to this and explain what is going on and also explain that the finished product on this particular site will be as per the development permit, the DVP.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, by way of background, this is one of the properties on Soball. It's on the east side of Soball going up the hill, and the zoning was in place. There was development permits for this and the companion property to the north that came forward to committee and council earlier this year, and those DPs were approved. And what it provided for is some recontouring of the site, which they've got started on, but they're at a point now where they need to do more extensive cutting and filling of the site. Now, normally that would happen as part of the building permit process. So rezoning, development permit, then building permit. But they're still in the building permit review process, and so that wouldn't be completed and the building permit wouldn't be issued, even if you phase the building permit to allow for a foundation until some time from now. So to sort of get ahead of that and take advantage of the drier weather, an option the city provides for is for the developer, the applicant, to apply for conservation permits. So what this enables them to do is they get onto the site and do the site preparation.
Excuse me, could we have one meeting here, please? Councillor Rasmussen?
Pardon?
Trying to listen to
Yeah, we're just pointing out something.
McIntyre. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so what the applicant has come forward is with this conservation permit is to request the opportunity to carry on with that site preparation works, the cutting and filling and bringing material onto the site, to take advantage of the dry weather so that when the building permit is issued, which I believe would be early in the fall, they can then roll on into the the normal site works and building construction. So what we've tried to show here with the cross-section shown on the screen is sort of, and this would be a slice through the site, sort of looking from the west to the east. And what you'll see there is sort of what was the existing grade, sort of the heavy line through the site. And then what you'll see is that sort of cross-hatch area, and that would be the fill. And that's what's happening now, is to provide for those fills along that slope to sort of create a bench for the 2 rows of townhouses and the internal roadway, all as per the development permit that was approved by council. So that's the situation we're in. Staff are supportive of the conservation permit. It will be, it's been prepared by the applicant's engineering consulting group. It's been reviewed by our technical staff. And it's a way to enable them to get on, do the necessary site works during the drier months, and then the building permit can be issued, and they can carry on with that stage as well.
So how, on the finished product, I assume is the top one, are these both the same site, or are they?
That's correct, Madam Chair. They're the same site. There's just different sections. I think the one at the top is a portion of it, and the other is the top portion of the site. It just shows two different sections through.
Oh, okay, that's what I couldn't, okay. All right, thank you. Any questions? Selena, Ben?
I just have questions about the process of bringing in all that material. And we've already had complaints about dump trucks turning around, misusing our roads, and risks to residents. And I just want to make sure that we remind our developers of our expectations about how their contractors are to make use of our roads, that there are people who are currently still living up there. This isn't just a construction site. And I want to make sure that we avoid some of those conflicts that we've seen in the past.
Madam Chair, very fair comments. I know myself, having driven up there just over the weekend, the section of Coast Meridian from David is now closed because that road reconstruction, so now traffic has been channeled further east and comes down Soball. So it makes for a busy area, but we'll make note of that and just remind the applicant and their consultants and their contractors to make sure there's safe movement for vehicles, and also cleaning up afterwards too, because you don't want dirt tracked off sites onto roads and so on.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Asmussen.
Well, through to staff, what I'd like to see in the future, when we have development applications, when we look at some of these, we don't see this type of the hashed area showing where areas being filled in or raised up in development. I have concerns about this form of development where you're raising up significantly on a plateau. The look of it, I'd rather see it lower down, built into the slope better. Town housing, we always talk about building it into the slope and using the slope here, and obviously we're not doing that here. And so for council's information in the future, when we look at applications like this and to question that, it would be very helpful to have this type of map included so we would have a better understanding, because if I'd known better, maybe council may know, or they may have had other questions or other concerns about this, but that's just what I'd like to see happen, please.
Do you have any comments, Mr. McIntyre?
Thanks, Madam Chair. No, again, a very fair comment, and we'll make note of that. This, to be perfectly honest, this was not an easy development permit application when it went through. There's different approaches to hillside development, and this represents one. But certainly in the future, we will ask the applicant to give us these sort of sections so everyone, it's clear to staff, committee, council, the community as to what's being proposed. So we'll look for that in the future and take that as direction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the diagrams. We met just at 10:30 this morning, so you fast artists. I'm impressed. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item.
Councillor Reid, I'll just have to, this is the next item I'll have to step out on.
You're not on the committee anyhow, so.
Okay, leave me.
But we'll miss you.
The next item, item 7, concerns the zoning bylaw amendment application to permit coach houses in the R7 small village single-family residential zone. The recommendation is that council direct staff to prepare a zoning amendment bylaw to permit accessory coach houses in this zone, and that council direct staff to consult with a number of groups, 5 of which are listed before you, and that this item move forward to this evening's standing committee or regular council meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have an amendment to go on this. So both members of the Land Use Committee were on a tour, a couple of us on more than one tour, and we saw some of these built in another municipality, not as nice as our municipality, of course, but lovely units. There's just 2 things when I went through this that didn't make a lot of sense to me right now, and with staff's help, this morning we made a revision to the recommendation number 1. After it says that council directs staff to prepare a zoning amendment bylaw to permit accessory coach houses in the RS7 small single-family residential zoning, comma, providing that minimum lot widths of 10 meters are maintained and secondary suites are removed as a permitted use.
Support that.
Okay? So do I have to, can we just move it as amended?
If the mover and seconder are in agreement, then
Councillor Reamer?
I'll second.
Okay. Councillor Nicholson?
Thank you. I'm not sure. I was warned this was on, and certainly it is. I was on the same tour. One of the things I noticed was one area where we tended to alternate between coach houses and secondary suites. And I'm wondering, if we completely remove secondary suites, then are we going to build solid blocks where you look down the back lane and it's all coach houses? Or do we have the advantage of seeing it switch back and forth? Because that seemed to be the solution that we saw in one of those.
And that's provided for in this, that you can have a coach house provided that you don't have a secondary suite.
Okay, I was not clear on the language. It read to me as though secondary suites would no longer be permitted in RS7. That's not so?
Well, Ms. Tiffany.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What staff is proposing is that, yes, we would remove the provision for secondary suites in the RS7 zone. In lieu, we would allow for accessory coach houses. Now, in terms of the concern about coach houses along the back of the lane and not alternating, I think ultimately that would depend upon the level or the type of review that we as staff would have or council would require as part of the provision of accessory coach houses in the RS7 zone.
Yeah, I'm not entirely clear. This would be in each individual application then?
In each individual application, as they come forward, either as part of a comprehensive site development, we could be looking at more than one, as is being proposed here with this particular application. It's actually several lots. It's not just one lot. So we would be looking at it from the entire site perspective. I guess the question is, do we ultimately require development permits as part of accessory coach houses, or do we just simply allow it by right through the zoning bylaw using certain regulations within the zoning bylaw to control the height, the character of how accessory coach houses look, including whether or not we want to see landscaping on the lanes, for example, in between each of the lots.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor
Yes, I do. Thank you. It was interesting to read about coach houses at grade, because we didn't see any. And I'm wondering if, for future, if you have some photos or where we might actually see that, because I'm trying to get a visual on how that would look and what kind of impacts that would make in terms of access to outdoor spaces and the bulking of it in terms of how dense does it actually feel. So if you have access to one, that would be great. I'm also wondering, I'm thrilled actually to see that we're going to look at coach houses, mostly because when you look at the Northeast, rental stock isn't being built, purpose rental housing, and I think this is one of the ways to go. That's not basement suite, and there are some fabulous basement suites out there, but I think people like to have light in their life, and I think this is a really nice way to go about doing it. So I look forward to sort of seeing how it plays out.
Okay, all in favor of the motion as amended? Carried.
Next item, item 8, is an update on the Austin Heights neighborhood plan process. The recommendation is that Council receive the report, that Council authorize staff to revise the neighborhood plan for Austin Heights for public review early in the fall based upon the following options set out in the attached report: mixed-use commercial core option D, housing choices option 4, and a review of applications for small coach houses within the expanded neighborhood attached residential designation through the DP process, and that this item be referred to this evening's regular council meeting. We do have a presentation on this from staff.
Yeah, I'm going to, before we do any motions, I'm hoping that we can have a deferral motion on this one till September. But Mr. McIntyre?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As the City Clerk has mentioned, we do have a brief presentation that we can make today if that's the committee's wish. However, given, I think, some of the questions and comments that are kind of surrounding this report and this initiative, it might be more productive and effective in getting at it by deferring it to a workshop in September. And if that's the committee's wish, the staff would be pleased to arrange for that. If, however, there are some questions today for staff or some areas of concern or some ideas that you'd like us to take away, we'd be pleased to receive that. And perhaps, Madam Chair, we can talk about the logistics of scheduling something, maybe to coincide with the same date of the next Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee, which I believe is September 13th. Maybe we're to have a pre-meeting, like a workshop in the council committee room, a little less formal. Staff can do a presentation. We can have some information there. And we have a little bit more around the table sort of discussion and a Q&A. It would be open to the public, but it would be a little more of a working session than sitting here in council chambers. That's staff's suggestion.
I like that idea. Yeah, so do I.
Okay, that was the discussion we had today, because there was, I know you both have concerns too, and we were talking about how wide an area we need to start with. I think we need to be a little more focused on our area. We want to talk about just having multi-family zones, commercial, residential, mixed zones, not specifying, as Councillor McDonnell would say, down to the yellow awnings. We want to sort of have a better discussion of this before it goes back out to the public. I think we need to do some dissection here, right? Yep. So I'll have a deferral motion.
Deferral.
Second. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next
Thank
item,
you.
please.
Next item, item 9, is report on applications for zoning amendment bylaw 4148, and this pertains to 2992 and 3004 to 3010 Glen Drive and an associated development permit. The recommendations that this item be referred to the regular council meeting this evening. The council give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw 4148, and that bylaw 418 and its related application be referred to public hearing.
So moved. I'll second. I have some questions.
Okay, the one item I might bring up is the visitor parking variance, and that is something that staff will work with the proponent on, because we're pretty stuck on that, and but it will not change the recommendation, because it still has to go through public hearing, et cetera, et cetera. So, Councillor Robinson?
Thank you. Visitor parking was one of them, and I'd like to, that when we're asked to do this kind of variance, I think it's important that that something else has to give, like a co-op car or something that, takes some resident parking away. So I think that's really important, that there has to be some room here. I like this idea of possibly a community garden. I'm just curious, what's that dependent on? Do we know what that's dependent on, or is it just an idea that's being floated at this point?
Through the chair.
With the green thumb?
Yes, right. Through the chair, yes, I believe that's just an idea that's being put forward by the applicant at this time as part of the provision of their common amenity area requirement.
Okay, thank you. I have one other. So I'm thrilled to see the office space coming to town. And I do like this idea that we're going to have at-grade commercial. Is there something that we can do? Do we have something in our toolkit to make sure it's not all hair and nail salons? I know that it's big business. I think it's fabulous, but we're getting a preponderance of these kinds of businesses, which is all fine and good, but it does not make for walkable. It does not make for, where's your dry cleaning, although it's bad for the environment, but, where's all the other amenities that people need when you're going to live and make it walkable? You can only walk to your hair salon, once every couple of weeks. So,
well, that's all market driven, I'm afraid. They come along and they...
But do we have any tools?
If I could, Madam Chair, a couple comments on that, and that's true. I think we've seen that trend with some of our other recent mixed-use developments in our city centre. I think it's a combination of things. Certainly, the market forces supply and demand. Some of the projects too, where they're stratified and the CRUs, the commercial rental units, are sold off to small investors. There's motivation to rent them out. As opposed to a larger developer that may be more selective in terms of getting that tenant mix. I think it's also just at the point where we are sort of in the maturation of our city centre. It's I think, developing in the right direction, but it's not quite there yet to get all the excitement of a Robson Street, for example. Just need a few more people. Be patient. In this case here, though, I think the really good news is there's CRUs at grade, but there's a whole lot of commercial space that they're committed to building above. So that's what's going to drive the job creation. That's going to put the the people working there that'll be out, needing those services in that area. They'll help supply or help create the demand to support those businesses. So we'll take that away and talk a little bit further with the applicant on just their thoughts on that. But just those are some observations now.
Thank you.
So, moved, seconded, all in favor, opposed, carried. I believe we're it.
That was the final formal item on the agenda, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Move for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. Second. In favor, opposed, carried.